Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to ACMCU. We are very delighted today to welcome Ani Zonneveld. I'm pronouncing correctly.
Ani Zonneveld.
Ani Zonneveld. Excuse me if I wasn't. Ani is, as you will see, and I'm sure I already have discovered in the short time I spoke to her, very impressive person. She is the founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values, a non-profit organization. And since she founded that, there has also been expanded, and they have branches in various major cities in U.S. as well as in Canada and in France and in Australia and Chile. More importantly, perhaps, in addition to her role as an activist and as a Muslim intellectual, is the fact that she's an artist. She's an artist, she's a musician, songwriter, singer, and she has promised me that she's going to give us a simple sample of that, which that is great. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Ani. Very much welcome to Georgetown and CMCU. I just wanted to, a couple of housekeeping words. One is that I hope you are aware that we are recording this session, and so that if you have any objection to that, then I'm afraid you have to leave. But I hope that you won't, because we like all of you to stay, and looking forward to your contributions. The other thing is that we have to finish exactly at 2 o'clock. I'm sorry? 1:45. 1:45. Well, I was being even more generous, but there you are. 1:45, because we do have classes and so on that are held in this thing. Having said those things, then I'm just going to ask Ani to make a presentation, and then I don't know how long do you think, maybe 25 minutes, half an hour, exactly. And then after that, we will have ample time for questions and answer. Again, Ani, welcome, and you have the...
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Is this good, Kevin? So my name is Ani Zonneveld. I will probably start with a personal story of how I became an activist. I came to the United States when I was 18, and I moved to Los Angeles to become a songwriter and producer. And I became quite successful at that, have a lot of songs published. And then 9/11 happened. Now, all this time as a songwriter-producer in Los Angeles, I was what you would call a closeted Muslim. I never showed my Muslim identity. It was very personal, but I was born and raised a Muslim, and so that was my private, personal identity. But with 9/11, that really changed, and I felt that the least I could do to contribute to Islam was to show a different face of Islam. Because one thing I learned when I went to school in Illinois is that there's this void. You either don't know anything about Islam, or the next thing you know is the terrorist actions of 9/11. And I had a personal experience that I was speaking to an elderly lady on the plane, and we were speaking for about half an hour, and then she said to me, "Oh, you seem like a really nice lady. Where are you from, and what church do you go to?" And I said, "Well, I'm Muslim." And she says, "Oh, I've never heard of that church before." And so this is the context from which not everyone in America, but especially in middle of America, right? And so given that background, I decided, well, the least I could do was contribute to a different image of what Islam and Muslims are. And as a songwriter-producer, I decided to do an Islamic pop CD. And what I was really shocked to find out, not realizing what I was wading into, was nobody would sell my CD because I used all sorts of musical instrumentation, and so that was haram. And the second reason they gave me was, well, the bigger haram was that I'm a female singer and my voice is awrat. So here I am, born and raised a Muslim, and this is a new concept to me, because I was like, wow, there is actually a parallel Muslim universe that I am actually unaware of. And so that really propelled me to to relearn Islam, and in relearning Islam, I discovered that Islam was much more liberating than the understanding of Islam that I was raised on. And I was raised pretty pragmatic, but given the environment that I was in Los Angeles, the conservative community that I was a part of, I discovered that the Islam that was really inherently Islam was actually very progressive. And so I became an activist. I started a progressive Muslim community in Los Angeles January 6, 2006, so it's almost 8 years ago. And so in 2007, it became a national organization, 501c3. And note, you know, there has always been this, since 9/11, there's always been this pockets of progressive Muslim communities in various cities in the United States, but coming together and forming a 501c3 was really was really what needed to happen in order for all of that to coalesce together, for our communities to coalesce together, for us to actually have a voice in America. So I'm going to sing you a song called Just Like Khadija, because this is one way that I wanted to not just teach non-Muslims in America about the role of Muslim women in our heritage, but also to remind Muslims in general about the role of women, especially Khadija, had in our community. And so I'll sing a clip of it. And when you hear the music production, you'll understand why most of the Muslim organizations and retail outlets would not sell it. So I'm not trying to be Britney Spears or anything. I'm just saying, okay? So, all right. So hang on a second. And so I hope you can hear. Oh yeah, my voice is coming through, so that's good. All right, here we go. It's not playing. All right, so I'll just go to the audio then. There's a lady I want to know. She lived 1400 years ago. The wife of Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon both of them. A businesswoman with her own identity. In a world where girls are not as worthy, she gave back so much to her community. What a role model for me. Just like Khadija, I want to be strong. Stand up for what's right and fight what's wrong. Just like Khadija, I will be that girl, a super Muslim woman in this world. As she invested a lot for Islam, with a humble heart and open arm. She's the princess of Mecca and the pure one, Al-Tahira. She stood by her husband through the thick and thin, for the sake of Allah and the religion, living her life in submission of the deen. What a role model for me. Just like Khadija, I want to be strong. Stand up for what's right and fight what's wrong. Just like Khadija, I will be that girl, a super Muslim woman in this world. Like Khadija, I want to be strong. Stand up for what's right and fight what's wrong. Just like Khadija, I will be that girl, a super Muslim woman in this world. So that's sort of like, you know. So anyway, so that was Just Like Khadija. And I'm going to stand here from now on and carry on with a PowerPoint presentation. I think many of us in the Muslim community have forgotten or have decided to forget the role of Muslim women in Islam. And one of the CDs actually talks about the values of Islam. It highlights our values, not dogma. And it's a good teaching tool when I speak to non-Muslim audiences, because it is for them, and music is a powerful tool. And I have seen, when I sing a song that has the word jihad in it, I've seen people cringe in their seat, and by the end of the song they're clapping and singing along. So that's how powerful music is, and that's why I think I was born with that, and I have found a new path to using that talent, that God-given talent. So, as I said earlier, I decided to become an activist as a result of 9/11, and I know 9/11 had a very powerful impact on Americans, but as for Muslim Americans in particular, it was first denial, it was shock, it was reflection, and for some of us it is still denial, but for many of us it has been a pushback. And Muslims for Progressive Values is one of the entities that's pushing back against the radical theology. What is Muslims for Progressive Values? And these are just the 10 principles that I'm highlighting. Identity. If you call yourself a Muslim, then you're a Muslim. Equality, because we believe in the Quran, it talks about equality of men, women, everyone, the underprivileged, the poor, the children. And these are values that we have forgotten, that we have not taken care of within the context of Islam as Muslims. Separation of religious and state authorities. This is really a problem in America too now, because you have Congress that is now occupied by the right-wing Christian, and if anything, they're actually implementing what I call Christian Sharia law, because they have actually implemented legislation that reflects their Christian values, and basically which impacts all of us here in America. Separation of religious and state authorities in the Muslim world, we are really, we feel that in order for Islam to really be pure, there cannot be a favor of one religion over the other. So, for example, Saudi Arabia is a Sunni institution. It's a Sunni state institution. Israel you have is a Jewish state institution, and Iran you have is a Shia state institution. And all three of them are perfect examples of how it does not work. Right? Freedom of speech. We have been, as a Muslim organization here based in the United States, we've been strongly advocating for Muslim voices, especially minority voices in Muslim-majority countries. So a perfect example of recently, Raif Badawi was a Saudi activist who put out who administered and wrote on a site that he created called Liberal Saudis and Liberal Muslims, and it was a space, an online space, where Saudis were able to express their views, political, religious views, but because it wasn't traditional, they clamped it down, and he's just been sentenced with 7 years in jail and 600 lashes. And this is just one example of the injustice that's happening in the Muslim world. And as Muslims, if you recall, Prophet Muhammad was very liberal in how people nagged him every single day, people trash talked him every day. And he never imprisoned, he never punished anyone for expressing their views. People during his days converted in and out of Islam, and they didn't get jailed or punished or hung for converting out of Islam, right? This is what's happening in the Muslim world now, supposedly under the pretext of Sharia law, but that is not how Islam was at its inception. And that's what MPV feels Islam should be. That's how we should be conducting ourselves. Freedom of speech is we are given the God-given gift of the brain, and it is for the purpose of thinking, critical thinking. And the Quran talks many times about Islam is for thinkers. Think, be critical. Think, be critical. And that's definitely not what we do in the Muslim world, which is really I think adds to this, is the result of, or is the reason why we're in such a sad state right now. Universal human rights, that's a no-brainer. Women's rights. We were sort of having a friendly banter here about women's rights in Islam. There is, and we are very avant-garde about this issue. It's not just about the right of women as, in the sense of, marriage or child or inheritance, but it's really about women's reproductive rights. It is about women having the freedom to choose their lives, the right to not be forced into marriage, because after all, the Quran is very clear. At the end of the day, marriage is between two souls of two sound minds. And the injustice towards women in Islam is incredible. And we can, this would be a few hours conversation. LGBTQ rights is the same thing. We come from the context that nobody was punished during Prophet Muhammad's times for being gay. And there is a complete respect for human dignity. And this is where we want to go back to. This is where Islam should be. And MPV, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, has been one of our key trademark activism. And I can go into that deeper later. Critical analysis and interpretation. The members of the progressive Muslim community are very diverse. They're old, young, of all races, and also of all madhabs, of all denominations. There's Sunnis, Shia, Sufis, Ahmadiyas, secular, ex-Muslims coming back, you name it, all kinds. But what brings us together is the critical analysis and interpretation of our sacred texts. And we do so from the context of, we do so out of love. We don't do so out of just being critical for the sake of being critical. And so this is an important point of why Muslims for Progressive Value exists still, almost 7 years later, is because our work is very much hinged on sacred texts and scholarly writings. We have a lot of professors that we confide in and that we speak to as advisors. And so as a result of that, none of the Muslim world has been able to knock us down, because our work has been from the context of sound scholarly research. Compassion. It's almost a no-brainer, but compassion is really lacking, especially in the mosque, and that is, I think that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of Muslims don't attend mosque anymore, because they're very disenfranchised with how the mosque is being conducted, how people judge you, how you dress or do not dress, where you put your arm, the whole prayer thing. And just compassion towards our fellow human beings, whether you're Muslim or not, to the environment, to the animal kingdom. This is like the basic values in the Quran that is not being practiced. Diversity. God is the creator, and this creator is bloody creative, right? And here we are as human beings, we are very judgmental of anyone that is different from us. And that is not the essence of Islam. So MPV, when we talk about diversity, we don't talk about tolerance, we talk about acceptance. That's a big difference. Tolerance is actually a very ugly word. I'll put up with you. I'll tolerate you. It's actually a really ugly word, and I think we should shy away from that and start shifting ourselves into acceptance. Some of the things that we do is educational materials, but the arts is a big component. We have a documentary called Ijtihad, Feminism and Reform, which is a collection of 9 different speakers, thinkers, scholars, all in one DVD that talks about various issues. A lot of it comes from the 10 principles, but from a progressive perspective. And Professor John Esposito has some time on that DVD as well. I want to go into this Eid prayer. And it says at 1.1 million views. We're actually at 2.4 million views now. And this was our Eid prayer last year. And there was this young African-American woman in our Muslim community in LA who led prayer. And this snapshot really tells it all of what makes Muslims for Progressive Values different in our community. You have men and women praying together side by side. And the fact that all we're trying to say is, hey, look, when we go to Mecca, we don't segregate. Why do we segregate in the mosque? Can we please allow for families to pray together? Is it really that? Yeah, really. Is it really that complicated? Is it that sexually charged to be praying beside someone of the opposite sex. You know, in the Muslim community, we talk about brotherhood and sisterhood, right? But it doesn't mean anything. It only means something if you or I can pray beside a man of the opposite sex and really feel that he's my brother. And that's a powerful, and that's sort of like the reaction that we get all the time when members of a community or people that come for the first time and we pray together the way we do, they feel they feel like they're part of humanity. Because they're not being artificially segregated, right? There's something about that is really unnatural about how Islam is being practiced. The severe segregation is unnatural. It just is. You know, we give birth, us women. Why are we in the back? Why can't we have that voice up in the podium? Why can't we give the sermon? After all, the first voice the child hears is probably the mom's, right? And so when people say to me, "Oh, it's unnatural for a man to hear a woman's voice," you hear a woman's voice outside the religious institutions. So the one thing that MPV, our community, is, it's a brand. If you go to an MPV mosque or a space of worship, you will likely, you may see a woman leading prayer, you may see a man leading prayer, you may see a Sunni, you may see a Shia leading prayer, you may hear a gay man giving the khutbah. It's not a big deal for us. They're human beings. And when I say gay people giving khutbahs, and we don't have this policy of don't ask, don't tell. We really encourage everyone to come as you are, be yourself, because we pray, we say Al-Fatiha into a blue in the face. And part of that Fatiha is about leading the straight path. You can't really lead the straight path if you're dishonest. And you certainly can't lead the straight path if you're dishonest about who you are as an individual, because then you're not only being dishonest about yourself, but you're just being dishonest about yourself and to your community. That is not the straight path. So our community is really about encouraging self-realization, being who you are, being honest, empowering them to be full human beings. And with that, it enriches the community at large. With that, you get the richness of you, your soul, your God-given gift, right? With no prejudice. And so when we come to space, our tagline is, this is a place where you can be Muslim and be yourself. Think about that. How many spaces do you know where you can be Muslim and be yourself? A lot of time when you go to a mosque, you have a mosque character. And when you step out of the mosque, you have your true character. And that's what we want to, that's something that doesn't work, that needs to change. And so in this, as a result of this prayer service, I got invited to a television interview, an Egyptian television interview, and on the panel was a Muslim Brotherhood clergy, and this was before they were deposed of. And one of the questions they asked was, does she wear makeup, or did she wear perfume? And my response was, that's the wrong question, because what they have done essentially is they have sexualized the prayer space, right? When you are asking, that's like the furthest from our mind. Do you wear perfume? Do you wear makeup? It's so irrelevant. But Islam, the fact that we have severe segregation and the women cannot lead prayer and the excuses given is a sexual reason. We have essentially sexualized the practice of prayer. And we have sexualized the woman's body. That's why they have to be covered. Right. So that's another way of looking at it. Our community has grown. It's no longer just in Los Angeles. It's in Washington, D.C. It's in Atlanta. It's in Columbus. We just opened up 2 chapters in Chicago, New York. And we have 2 chapters in Canada, France, Chile, and Australia. And we hope to have a chapter in the Middle East in the next year. So that is what's really important about our prayer service. And I want to show you real quickly a video, because video always works. And this is our Eid prayer in Los Angeles here.
Arabic and English, because that's the language that we speak here. But we wanted to keep the tradition of the Arabi because it's the most purest form of the Quran. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All thanks and praises are due to the cherisher and sustainer of the universe. Sirat al-Mustaqim, show us the straight path. Sirat al-Ladina an'amta alayhim, the path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. Allah, we come to you right now as a community and congregation of believers, associating ourselves with all who truly seek you. Before anything, we appreciate being able to live another day in a state of health. We seek your guidance, and we ask that you guide us to and in the straight path, which, as a Muslim and progressive believers, we believe the straight path is the path of strength, path of love, truth, and creativity.
Good morning, peace be unto you all. Great to see you, and this joyous and blessed day. I'll be speaking a bit about my personal story and attempt to humbly speak on the theme of patience, perseverance, and self-empowerment in Islam. The Quran says in Surah 2, ayahs 155 to 157, "Be sure we shall test you with something of fear and hunger, some loss in goods, lives, and the fruits of your toil. But give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere, those who say when afflicted with calamity, to Allah we belong, and to Him is our return. They are those on whom descend blessings from their Lord and mercy. They are the ones who receive guidance. So although our struggles are very personal things, we are never alone, for there is great comfort in where we overlap." Which brings me to the topic of the immense healing capacity that a supportive community brings, much like the community we have here, and its amazing ability in fostering a collective growth as much as it supports individual growth. God is closer to you than your jugular veins. In remaining steadfast in our belief and humbling ourselves through trials of this life, our faith grows so we become emboldened and empowered. When we then extend this personal empowerment through to our community and continue to grow together, I believe this is where truly great things happen.
Praise be to God, who all the worlds made, gracious and merciful, the compassionate, King and Queen of the day of faith. Only thee do we adore, and only thee do we crave. Guide us to the path which is straight, the path of those from whom
So, you get the picture. So, the one thing that I want to end with is music, the arts, and how, for us in the progressive Muslim community, music, the human voice is an expression of spirituality. And in Sunni Islam, a lot of that has been taken out. The only form of music and worship through song in Islam is primarily in the Sufi denomination. In Sunni, that is not the case. And what is really sad is the human voice is an amazing spiritual tool. And what we've done is we've taken that out. We've killed it in Sunni Islam. I can't speak for Shia. I don't know much about that practice.
More or less the same.
Yeah, more or less the same. So what we've decided to do is, as American Muslims, and applies to a lot of the progressive Muslim communities, no matter where they are, is to be able to adapt music to incorporate music back into our spiritual practice. And so again, my background as a songwriter producer came in handy, and what I've started doing is to develop spiritual songs in English, because what we have qawwalis, and that's Urdu. We have all sorts of worship songs in different languages and in Eastern scales. We don't have anything that is homegrown American. And so I feel that this is also a contribution that I can make to Islam in the context of American Muslim or Western or new interpretation of Islam and the practice of Islam. And what we find that when we end our service, our Friday prayers or our community gathering with not just prayer, but we end with songs, singing together, it really fills our heart with love. And it's incredibly moving to see that this happening in front of you. And I think if you come from a Christian and Jewish faith tradition, you understand the power of music, of everyone singing together in the church, and how that ambiance is so awe-inspiring. And this is something that I feel that we are lacking in the Muslim community, and I think this is something that will be the norm in Islam 20 years from now. I can't say for the rest of the world, but definitely in America. And I'm going to end my talk with the song called Prayer of Light. It's a song that I wrote it's a CD called Islamic Hymns, and it's a new musical genre. And it's essentially English Islamic lyrics on classical genre arrangements, yeah? Oh, Allah grants me light in